All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. My guest today is just an awesome human being, inside and out, an extraordinary entrepreneur. One of those people that I just love talking with, not only because she brings so much to the table, but she just brings a smile to your face. She's got a great energy, and she's done a lot when it comes to digital marketing. Let's put some perspective and some numbers to this. Her average client sees an increase in their audience reach by 361%. When it comes to engagement, her average client gets a 399% increase engagement, and then a 215% increase in website clicks over 90 days. She works with a whole bunch of small and medium sized businesses, but she's also helped really big brands like Carnival Cruise Lines or Brightline, Whole Foods, and so forth, helping them do the same thing. She helps many small businesses between impressions, reach, engagement, website traffic, and all of that. And in today's digital world, if you're not mastering the digital landscape, you're behind the eight ball. So, without further ado, Lyndsi, Edgar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Charles, and for the very nice introduction. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, you just, like I said, you bring this great energy. You bring it to my team. You bring it to the board of directors. You bring it to your clients. You bring it to really everybody. And I tend to think that not only is it just who you are as a human, but I have a feeling that it's connected to the fact that you genuinely love what you do. Is that a fair statement?
It's a very fair statement. I am very fortunate to have stumbled upon something that I truly love. And every day when I wake up, I'm actually excited to get to the computer. And if I'm not at the computer, I'm going for a run. I'm thinking about it, stuff that within my business and for my clients. And I do it because I truly enjoy it. So, yes.
And we were just talking right before we started this podcast. I mean, in the Beyond Seven Figures podcast, what we've noticed is that mindset is everything. And there are some people that subscribe to the whole hustle methodology, which, is fine. Whatever methodology you subscribe to, that's great. The other people subscribe to more of, I'm going to design the life that I want, and the business is just going to have to comply. And you subscribe more to the latter. And you were telling me that you just got back from a 5-week RV trip traveling around the world with your family. And during that time, you managed to extend a client contract. You brought in new business while your kids were making mud pies, or you were joining your kids making mud pies and swimming in the streams and the lakes and everything else, right? That didn't happen by accident. There had to have been a reason why you created the business that way. And what was that motivation? And talk to me a little bit about what it's like running a remote business. If you ever thought about having an office with all your employees and whatnot that way, talk to me about lifestyle design.
Of course. So I would say that I was in that hustle mentality, in that mode pre children. And once I had my son 6 years ago, there was a shift, a huge shift in how I wanted to spend my time. Even more of a shift when COVID hit. And I was home with a newborn and a 6 year old. And I had realized how little time I was spending with my children because they were in daycare. A nanny was watching them because I was in such hustle mode. And ever since COVID hit and I was home with them, really spending a lot of time with them, I said to myself, I want to make some changes. And I'm very fortunate to be in a position to be able to make those changes because I owned my own company. So I could work as much or as little and as flexible as I wanted to. And so post COVID, when everyone was kind of starting to get back into normal life again, I had made a lot of changes and I was extremely fortunate to have built an incredible team to be able to take care of my clients and do the exceptional work that they do. And so I didn't have to be in the day to day. I was more strategy and sales and, of course, support if they needed it. And as a result, it allowed me to have a better lifestyle business and I didn't have to work so many hours. And fast forward these 6 years later, I'm able to hop in an RV for 5 weeks. And I certainly did work during that time, but I was very focused and I did what I needed to do. But then come 3 o'clock, it was time to go fishing and rafting down the stream with my 4 and 6 year old. And I'm very, very excited to be able to do that, but then also do what I love as well.
We have many clients that they have the things they want, but more important than the things that they want, they have a list of non-negotiables. Like, this is my non-negotiable. I have one client runs a company doing about $50 million dollars. And he said, Charlie, my non-negotiable is that I have to be home every night to wash my daughter, to bathe my daughter. If that means I go back to the office afterwards, if I have to, then I'll go back to the office. But my non-negotiable is I want to be there for bath time. And of all the non-negotiables that somebody could give me, like, that was the number one most important thing that he said, hands down, no matter what, I will never miss bath time. And he hasn't. And I remember you and I spoke, I think the first time we talked
About a
must have been about,
year. Yeah, it was like about a year or so ago. Yeah.
yeah, at least. And your non-negotiable right off the bat was, my kids are my priority and I want to be there for my kids, which is phenomenal, right? I mean, that's my non-negotiable. I am working from my home office right now. As I look out the window, I see the kids swimming in the pool. And, I hear the other kids making ruckus. And I'm sure if the microphone's sensitive enough, everybody can hear it. But that's non negotiable, and you build the business around it. And you've done a great job building the business around that non negotiable, but you are very clear. This is what I'm going to do. And I respect you for that. That was really great. Now, let's take a quick turn. The majority of your clients tend to fall into what industry or category would you say?
We focus mostly on B2B and professional services. Those are really our two niche markets.
And we say B2B and professional services. What platforms right now are you finding to be the most significant? In other words, what advice would you give somebody who's like, I'm not really on social media, or I don't know where to focus my attention on social media? Where do you direct them?
Right now, it's LinkedIn all the way.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are really seeing a lot with LinkedIn. And not only LinkedIn for the company, but LinkedIn for the personal founders or partners of your company. At the end of the day, people want to work with people.
Yeah.
So making sure that you personally have a presence online and you're providing valuable content on your personal LinkedIn accounts.
I fully agree with you. Our best leads, our traffic, so forth, all that comes from LinkedIn. And it's funny because, if you listen to the gurus and you hear everything, they're big on pushing Instagram, 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 Instagram. Like, everybody's pushing it. And I spent more money than I care to admit on really blowing up Instagram as much as I could. But there's a different mindset between people who are surfing on Instagram. I'm not saying not to be on Instagram. You want to be everywhere, right? I'm not saying not to be on Instagram, but there's a different mindset between the people on Instagram, the people on LinkedIn. Can you talk a little bit about what that shift is?
LinkedIn, if people are on there and they're spending time posting and they're really engaging, then they're really focused on their career and their personal brand and their image. And so when you're on LinkedIn, also engaging and being part of that conversation, we just tend to have better results. And your mindset is more focused on that professional mentality. Whereas Instagram, it's a variety. It could be heavily entertainment and a lot of, e-com and products are there as well. And yes, people are going there for, professional growth and to learn, but we've tend to find more success by focusing on the LinkedIn platforms, especially in the B2B and professional services space. For the companies, we are focused on Instagram. We are creating reels and videos, but for the actual ROI, we are seeing better results with LinkedIn.
Yeah. We have a number of people that will follow us on Instagram, and, they'll follow us because they're just kind of, for entertainment
Mhm.
purposes or whatnot. But the business conversations usually start because of something posted on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
you know, and it is that mindset. When you're on LinkedIn, like, you're on, I want to grow my business, or I want to find a vendor or client. In fact, one of our clients I was just talking to this morning, he was telling me that a Fortune 1000 company reached out to him and wanted to do business with him. And I said, well, what was it that inspired that conversation? He said, I wrote a post about a topic that they were trying to solve. They didn't follow me. They never engaged with me. They never connected with me. But it was the post that they read that one of the management team members in that company reached out and said, can we have a conversation about trying to solve that problem? And that's the interesting thing about LinkedIn, right? Oftentimes I fell in this trap when I started that I'm like, oh man, I'm not getting a whole lot of likes. I'm not getting a whole lot of comments. Is this even doing anything? And I was surprised to see how much influence and impact it actually did make. I mean, now things are different. Now I get more engagement, but
Don't get caught up in that. Yeah.
why should we not get caught up in that? What are you seeing on your end?
So, as much as everybody hates to hear it, it takes time. It takes time. Just because you posted one thing on LinkedIn, don't expect all these people to be reaching out to you for business. So, I would say number one is making sure that you are consistently getting yourself out there because people have to see you and your company multiple times
Yeah,
before they move forward. So, consistently driving valuable content out there, getting yourself out there is key. Another one is initiating conversation. So don't come out the gates just trying to sell right away.
yeah,
If you are on LinkedIn and you're reaching out to people, make it be more conversation in nature. Are you happy with your engagement or have you considered including video? These are some of the ways that I've initiated conversation, and it doesn't always lead to meetings in business, but a lot of times it does. And so if you approach the platform and not okay, has this post led me to this many sales, but rather you approach it as how can I provide value to people? How can I initiate conversation and grow my network? Then you will see the results. But it can be a bit indirect because it does take time.
sure. Let's put some context around it and give people a taste of what you're talking about. So, starting a conversation, there's several different triggers that can start a conversation. What's your favorite trigger?
I have a few, and I'm going to shamelessly plug my LinkedIn workshop that I'm doing at the end of this month.
Yeah,
That's going to share
great.
all of my ways to initiate conversation. So there's cold prospects that I reach out to, and then there's warm prospects. I'll put it into two buckets. So from the cold prospects, I am a huge fan of Sales Navigator. This allows you to really be able to see who your network is through second connections, third connections, location, a variety of factors. And so some of the lists that I like to utilize would be one that I've found extremely helpful is going through people who went to the same college that I went to.
Mhm.
So I will go into Sales Navigator, I'll filter out anybody who went to Florida State University and filter out some additional, maybe they're the owner of the company, location, a certain size, and then I'll initiate conversations that way. It's a little bit of a warmer lead because we went to the same alma mater. The response is better. So that's one is just finding whether it's the same school, same association, same group. That's a really great opportunity to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah,
Another that I like to do is connections of a current client. So, of course, I ask my client, can I use your name? And I'll get permission that way. And then I'll filter out through connections of my client and I'll say, I'll reach out, maybe make a comment or question about a post that they did on LinkedIn. And then, hey, by the way, how do you know Michael Wild? And then we kind of get that conversation going because of that bridge as well. Another one is viewing your profile recently. So you have the ability to filter if there's people who have viewed your profile within 30 to 90 days, you can reach out. And a lot of times I'll say something along the lines of, thank you so much for viewing my profile. And hopefully my marketing content is helping your company. And then I'll ask, just curious, are you just digging the content or would you like to chat further? And then sometimes I'd like to chat further and I'll get meetings that way. So I would say those are kind of three ways that I'm reaching out to cold prospects. And then from a warm prospect standpoint, these are individuals that I've already spoken to, whether it's email, I may have sent them a proposal already, I may have had an initial sales call with them. I will go into their LinkedIn, make sure that I'm connected with them because, of course, I want them to see the content that I'm putting out on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. But then I go a step further and then I save them in my sales navigator under a list called warm prospects. And on a couple times a week, I'll go, I actually did it this morning. I'll go into my warm prospect list and I will look to see if they have made any posts on their personal LinkedIn. I'll go to their LinkedIn and I'll comment on their posts. I'll like their posts because it's a really nice, subtle way to let them know that I'm here, to also let them know that I'm supporting them. It helps my engagement as well because I'm engaging with them. Most likely they're going to engage back with me, but it's also just a really great approach to sales.
One of the great things about engaging on other people's posts and connecting with them, like if you're doing any sales whatsoever, and I'm talking more so to our audience right now, because I know you're doing this, if you're doing any sales whatsoever and you've scheduled a call, the first thing you should do is immediately connect with them on LinkedIn. Hey, so and so, looking forward to our call on such and such a date. What that does when they accept that connection request, now you're going to be able to show up in their newsfeed. Now, we know that consumption drives conversion. The more content somebody consumes, the more likely they're going to consume. But when you connect with somebody, you get preference on LinkedIn. I think it's something like 7 days or so. You get preference in the newsfeed. And then every time they like, comment, engage, you continue to get preference in the newsfeed.
Happens more and more. Yep.
Exactly. And so you drive more of that consumption, help shorten the sales cycle, increase the conversion. But also, what you do is rather than a salesperson being that annoying kid in the back seat of the car that is sitting there going, hey, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Yep.
And the salesperson is going, you ready to buy yet? You ready to buy yet? You ready to buy yet? Because follow up is important. When you leverage LinkedIn correctly, what you're doing is you're staying top of mind, you're adding comments, you're giving them that opportunity to go through the sales cycle that they need to go through. And in some cases, it's decision by committee or they're doing their research and so forth. Because we know the average person's looking at a minimum of 27 different sources before making a buying decision. But by offering that perspective and that consumption and that content, you're influencing their decision. The most known person, generally speaking, tends to have create bias in the buyer's mind. So if you're more known, if you show up more than anybody on their LinkedIn and they see you everywhere, 4 magic words, I see you everywhere, right? The more that helps to give you preference when the buying decision is made. But now let's go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, as you talked about. LinkedIn Sales Navigator, let's say you're dealing with some of the bigger companies. Not only to your point, are you adding the decision maker on LinkedIn Sales Navigator? You can also add all the different committee members, anybody that would have influence over the decision, and start being familiar to them by engaging in their content and so forth. But Lyndsi, there's a time to connect with somebody, and then there's a time not to connect with somebody, right? So you're not just going to like blanket send connection requests to like a whole bunch of randos, right? So what is your rule for when you're actually going to connect with somebody?
I'm a huge fan of HubSpot to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and there's processes in place. So anytime that somebody is showing interest in whether it's downloading something that I offer or I'm hosting a workshop or they just want to have a meeting with me, they go into my HubSpot and they automatically go into a workflow that sends me a task to say, connect with them on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
And that's usually when that connection occurs. I don't really do it if I'm doing any type of cold emailing or if they viewed my LinkedIn profile, I'm still not connecting with them yet. It's really when they take that initiative,
Hmm.
that initial step, that's when I'll make that step and connect with them.
You and I are not surprisingly, sing off very similar notes. And so if somebody was to leave you a comment on one of your posts, would you connect with them then if they left you a comment?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I do. I'll get comments for people. A lot of people that are commenting are usually people that I'm already connected with. If they're taking the time to comment, I'll go to their page, take a look, see if, okay, is this somebody that maybe there's good synergies here? Then I'll take that next step.
Now, I know that there are some people on LinkedIn that have made it a rule that they refuse to connect to people that they don't know. And then there are other people on LinkedIn that will say, I'll accept everybody, it doesn't matter. And then, there's another group that says, I will accept anybody that falls within my ideal client profile. So, what advice do you give to your clients when it comes to accepting connection requests?
It depends on what their goals are. So there are some individuals where they want to have that really close knit on LinkedIn and they want to know everybody on there. If they go to somebody, they want to be able to see, okay, all the people I'm connected with, I know all those people. And so I understand if that is their approach and that's how they want to have a very close knit LinkedIn account, then only accepting people that you know.
Yeah.
I tend to accept those that are in my ideal client profile because I want to market myself. You never know who people know. And I've gotten, fortunately in this year alone, I've closed at least one or two deals that have come from LinkedIn every single month. So just growing that network has really allowed me to do so. While I'm not somebody that's going to say, hey, accept everybody, I joke, I say sometimes LinkedIn can be spam city and you're going to get inundated with everybody who's going to try to sell you something. And yes, it does happen. I'm not going to argue with you there. But there are a lot of people on there where you want to connect with them because they might need your service or their brother might need your service and you just don't know. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say those are kind of really the two approaches that my clients take and that we take.
So let's start with increasing your audience reach by 361%. Is that just from LinkedIn, or how are you working with these B2B professional services companies to increase audience reach by that much?
So, the first step that we take when we bring on a client is really understanding the foundation of their company. I think so many individuals in this space are so quick to say, "Hey, okay, yeah, I'll handle your social media or your digital marketing. Hey, send over your logins. We'll get started tomorrow." And they don't take the time to pause
Yeah.
and really understand the goals of the company, the brand voice, the target market. What are the questions, concerns, issues that your target market is facing so you can develop really sound, valuable content
Yeah.
for that market? And so, number one, before we get started with anything, is having an initial strategy session with the client. This is about an hour long session, and we have a long list of questions that we ask them.
Yeah.
And then we go a step further and we create a very comprehensive marketing deck that includes your target market, your brand voice, your brand guidelines, what I like to call content pillars. So, making
Yeah.
sure that you have a variety of different pieces of content out there. So it's not just the same education or buy my services, making sure that it's maybe behind the scenes, a little humor, some inspiration. And then we'll create a content calendar and some sample posts. And the reason I bring this up is because once we really peel back the layers and understand what the target market is interested in and really understand the company, then we can create great content.
Hmm.
And as a result, great content leads to better reach and better engagement. So that would be number one. Secondary, I would say it is a pay to play model in social media, especially with Meta. Fortunately, a little bit of ad dollars go a long way. So, a lot of times we'll do, for example, custom audiences where you can take a list of your prospects or customers and upload it into Meta to make sure that the content that we're creating for you gets in front of those individuals.
Hmm.
So, having a strong foundation and then a strong social media advertising strategy, I would say, are kind of two of the main pillars for getting that reach up, engagement up, and website clicks up in a very short amount of time.
Awesome. And, just to speak on the content part, a lot of people are so quick to put out content.
Hmm.
And many times when they're putting out content, they're actually not thinking about how this can influence a sale. In fact, so much of what we do, whether it's websites, content, emails, all this other stuff, they always fall into two different departments. It could be sales prevention, or it could be, sales enhancement. It help sales conversion. And people don't oftentimes realize that they're inadvertently driving things into sales prevention. It could be sending an email that has no value whatsoever. Well, through Pavlov's dog then looks at that and goes, okay, you're sending me something that has no value to me whatsoever. They do it enough times, and then you're conditioning somebody to believe anytime I hear from you, it's going to be no value. And so
Buy my services, very, yeah, very focused on the client versus on your prospect. So, yeah.
exactly. So that goes in sales conversion. Or you send them something that they already know, or you write content that they already know. And so they end up going through mental opt out. In other words, I know this. And the moment they start reading something and you're not offering a new and fresh perspective, they get into this phase of mental opt out. And then we lose them. So there is the battle for attention is won when you're able to provide people with a new and fresh perspective that is valuable to the situation that's going on in their minds right now. One of the people we spoke with earlier in the podcast, I think it was either 5 or 7 companies he took on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list. I can't remember, but it was many times. A whole bunch of different industries. And I was like you do it once, good for you. You do it twice, it's like, okay, you kind of know your stuff. You do it 3 times, it's like, this is not an accident. 4 or 5 times, it's like, okay, you've got a formula really dialed in right now. So, what is that formula? And he said, it all comes down to just one thing and one thing only. It's a message market match. We spend so much time trying to say, what is a conversation that's going on in their head right now? What is their problems, their theories, their worries, their desires, and whatnot? And how do I plug in our message to say, I see you, I heard you, I understand you, and this is what you can do about it? And he said, we've gone so good at that people instantly come to our products, instantly come to our company and be like, oh, I'm home now.
Finally, I
Fine.
found it. Yeah.
Right? So,
Right.
so much of that, to your point in really understanding the client, if I'm going to give a warning to everybody here, if you're working with somebody to create content, whether it's an internal employee or a vendor or something like that, and they don't take the time to understand your ideal client, and they instantly just go to AI, whip something out, and put it out there for the sake of putting out content, you could be in the sales prevention department and inadvertently hurting your sales.
Mhm.
Let's actually take a quick segue into AI. How has AI both positively and negatively impacted your work?
The advent of AI, it did scare me. I'll be honest with you. It's especially in what we do, developing content. So the fact that AI can just develop lots of content, whether it's good or bad, it can do it. And we've come to learn that AI is really a great tool for research. It allows us to be able to stay ahead of what's going on in the particular industry of our clients. And it's very difficult to do that when we have, 40 clients, and some are in personal injury law, others are in commercial real estate. And so, how do we stay atop of what's trending, what's going on in those particular industries? And AI has allowed us to do that. So, we utilize AI for that standpoint of researching various places to come to the table and say, okay, this is what's trending. These are topics that people are interested in and want to see. So that's been the positive of AI. Negative is, I think, individuals really leaning on AI a little bit too much.
Mhm.
AI has its perks and it's fantastic, but when it comes to developing copy, it's certainly not you put it in and you're done and you can use it. Making sure that you are writing copy that's active voice, that's really your brand, that's really providing value, that takes some time.
Yeah.
And then also, the human element as well. So having a project manager in place to really put all the pieces together. Yes, we use AI for research and for strategy, but you really need that person to look at that strategy and does it make sense, and then tie it into what the client is saying and tie it into what the target market wants to see, and it all comes together. So
Yeah.
I've come to learn that will never be replaced because there's still that human element that needs to be there, but AI has allowed us to be able to kind of get ahead of the game from a research standpoint. as well as doing some video editing and some tools out there as well. It's certainly helped from a time management standpoint too.
Sure. When you think about AI and creating content, for example, right? You have the lowest level, which is write me a post about marketing, for example. I'm just making
Yep.
this up, right? Write me a post about marketing. And then I'll go ahead and I'll write a post. But the thing is if it's going to write a post that basically anybody could have access to, so anybody with AI that says write me a post on marketing is going to produce the same results. It's like really low value. So then we have to layer on some little bit of context so that the post that you're creating, even if you're going to have AI write it, which isn't necessarily a bad idea if you know how to prompt it correctly and whatnot, because it can do 80% of the heavy lifting. And then, you can go ahead and you can, make sure that everything is right. But if you give it the context, if instead of saying maybe write me an engaging post about marketing, if you give them the context of in my world, it's all about, the operating system that we've designed, which is about how you create, capture, nurture demand. So let's give it the context of write a post on marketing about how to create, capture, nurture demand, understanding this particular problem, and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, it'll put out a very unique post that nobody else in the space could put out because it's unique to our IP. And that becomes really valuable. That has that unique advantage. What used to take me 2 hours to write a post, now I can do it in, 10 minutes.
Hmm.
But I have to feed it the context. I have to tell it exactly like I'm talking to an employee. Hey, can you write me a post about our predictable profits operating system, specifically dealing with this particular challenge and our unique way of handling it, which is X? And then boom, done. Does that make sense?
It does. And it brings me to the point of if you are currently outsourcing your social or working with somebody, making sure that it is very much two-way communication because we are constantly communicating with our clients on a daily
Yes.
basis, a
Yes.
weekly basis, because we might say, okay, you want to post on what is marketing, but we're going to ask you the question of, tell us a story of what you've done with a client in marketing, or tell us your thoughts on this, or what is your favorite book about marketing and why do you love that so much? So we always are trying to tie in that personalized element
Yeah.
because that is what makes your post better than the rest because it's not generic. And so that's, just something to think about if you are working with a content creator. Are they doing that with you? Are they reaching out to you for that personalized piece?
You're so right because I can't even begin to tell you how many different content creators that I've hired over the years. And I've hired them, they put out a piece of content. I don't see an increase in traffic. I don't see an increase in engagement, but I'm doing what I am told to do, which is, you have to put out content and whatnot, right? And it wasn't until a long time I kept thinking, oh, it's got to be that creator. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Do another one. I was looking for the wrong things, right? It was like, I have to find somebody that is truly willing and able to understand everything that we do, what makes us unique, and then create that new and fresh perspective. But the thing is most entrepreneurs and the people that you're doing business with, like they're just so busy. The reason why they're not putting out the content is, they just don't have the time, but it's an essential part to doing business today. Just putting out content for the sake of putting out content will put you in the sales prevention department. But putting out content that acts as sales enablement to move the sale ahead by understanding the client, offering that fresh perspective. I can't emphasize it enough because that's an essential part to fill in the sales pipeline. And you'll know within 90 days of putting out content, is this in the sales creation or prevention department? Because it takes time, but you'll see more of a steady increase in leads and sales that are coming in. Now, Lyndsi, I know we're pushing up against the clock. This is Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say your biggest, best tip is for our listeners that want to take their companies beyond seven figures?
I'm really into time management. When I sit down at the beginning of the day, I have my to-do list, and my to-do list is numbered like 1 through 5. And those are the 3 to 5 things that I need to focus on today and not to get bogged down with the Slack messages, the emails, all the small nuances that tear you away from what's really important. So for me, at the end of each day, I look at, okay, what really needs to be done? And then I write out those, 3 to 5 things. So the next day when I sit down, I don't get tied away with something else. These are the things I'm focused on so I can propel myself where I want to go.
And what percentage of the time do you finish the tasks that you set on that to-do list? On average, would you say?
I would say 99% of the time, truthfully. If the day doesn't go completely awry, I'm really focused on getting those things done.
And I think that's the most critical part about time management and to-do lists, because actually it's one thing to create a to-do list, but if you look at the way that most people create that to-do list, they just take the to-do list and then they're like, oh, didn't finish it. I'm going to use the same one tomorrow, and I'll use the same one tomorrow, and I'll use the same one tomorrow. So then in order for you to do this, is it fair to say that you have the discipline? Anything you put out there, you're putting out there with the intention of, if it goes on my list, I have to do it. It's not optional. I have to do it. So at that point, you're much more intentional by asking yourself the question, is this the most important thing that I should be doing today? Because if there's only room for one or two or three or five, you really have to be intentional. Is this the most important thing that I have to do today in order to move the needle in the business? Is that a fair summary about your approach?
Absolutely. My to-do list is I think that's just kind of also part of my personality. I love checking things off a to-do list. I write it in my little planner every day. These are the 3 things, and I'm getting that done. And fortunately, I know we talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. I pick my kids up from the bus stop at 2:30, so I might not have my list completely done. But once my kids go to sleep, I'm back at my computer to finish what I need to get done so I
Yep.
could start my day fresh. So
I admire that discipline. I think you know me well enough to know that I'm a little bit more like Wile E. Coyote. I'm all over the place. Probably have a little bit of empathy or sympathy with Joe, my chief of staff who has to work with me, but he literally will show up every morning and he'll be like, Charlie, if you only do one thing, I need you to do this to focus.
and that goes to how important it is to have a strong team around you.
That is
So,
true.
very important.
Yeah, maybe he might check in with me later, be like, "Did we get that to Charlie? Get stop that, get back, pay attention."
Yeah.
Yeah, so I admire the discipline that you have. If I could have a little bit more of that in my life.
You have strong work ethic though, so that's also something that can be said for success as well.
And it's that old quote, if you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life, right?
Exactly.
So, Lindsay, people want to learn more about you and Illuminate Marketing. Where do we send them?
So, if you want to learn more about Illuminate Marketing, you can go to illuminatemarketing.com, and it's Eluminate. So, Illuminate spelled a little differently. And then if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best way to do it. So it's under Lyndsi Edgar. Lyndsi is spelled a little bit differently, but you'll see it in the podcast how you spell it. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn because I'm on it every day.
There's this saying that I like to use, and maybe it's a little bit crass, but whatever. You got to forgive me if I'm offending anyone. But it's like, you wouldn't go to a fat fitness trainer and then ask them to get in shape, right? Because it's like, it just doesn't make sense, right?
Mhm.
And so what I would recommend is that I do encourage you to go and connect with Lyndsi, because Lindsay's results will speak for itself. But just look at the way that she navigates through LinkedIn, everything from, how does her profile look and her photo to her banner image. And then look at her content. What do you notice about her content that is a little different than maybe what some of the other people are doing? And look at the content and say, which content has she created that has more likes, and maybe those that have less likes and more comments and less comments? What do we notice as similarities? Now, Lyndsi and I are very much alike in that the one caveat, the little asterisk that I want to put in there, is that we are our own guinea pigs. In other words, that, we will test things ourselves to see what the results are first before we suggest it to our clients. And so you might see something that Lyndsi does that is totally takes you by surprise. Like, whoa, that's weird. I wonder why she's doing that. Or she might only be doing that because she's testing it. to see what the results are, to then see, okay, well, this is cool. Let's maybe try it again a few more times, and then prove the significance and be able to roll it out to the clients. So it's nice when you can watch behind the scenes from the sidelines and say, okay, what's going on, what's working, what's not working, because that is going to help to influence the work that you do. So that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. That's Lyndsi Edgar. Check her out on LinkedIn. Illuminate Marketing. That's her website. And for additional tips, strategies, and information to take your business beyond seven figures, visit us over at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudette with my friend and neighbor, almost close neighbor,
Very close, very close. Might be able to ride my bike over there.
That is true.
A long bike ride, but yes.
Long bike ride. We're close enough. So Lyndsi Edgar, again, thank you for being a guest today. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you in another episode.